Hi, I'm Tyler, and welcome to another episode of my Christian Music Week reviews. Each week I take 5 releases, albums, EPs, or singles, and after I listen to them all week, I come back here and I review them. I share what I think about them. So without further ado, let's get to this week's first release, Matt Kearney's new album, January Flower. Matt Kearney's new album, January Flower. Let's talk about it. So stylistically, you're definitely a pop album, but also has some folk and hip hop elements intermixed into that. As for instruments here, acoustic guitar, bass guitar, synth, bass, and drum. And as for the lyrics here, talks about him and his wife here. Talks about how they fell in love together quickly, maybe a little too quickly even. Also talks about how they go anywhere together. But it also talks about how there's this Grand Canyon divide, so to speak, in their relationship, and he talks about how he struggles to listen to his wife, but by the end of the album, he seeks to get this relationship out of the rut it's currently in, and sees the chance to make this relationship something beautiful. Up next, The Belonging Company's new album, See the Light. The Belonging Company's new album, See the Light. Let's talk about it. So, definitely a worship album here for sure, but does sprinkle in pop and gospel influences as well as at a few points. The gospel influences, I would say, are particularly reserved towards the beginning a little bit more. And as for instrumentation here, we have piano, some synth, we have drum, we have electric guitar, along with some acoustic and bass guitar, especially more as the album goes on, a little bit later on in the album. And as for the lyrics here, pretty good album, by the way. As for the lyrics here, touches on some pretty good themes here. Talks about how when we turn our eyes upon Jesus, everything else fades. Also talks about how he is our never defeated Lord over everything. Talks about Jesus, our never defeated Lord over everything. Talks about how God's love has invaded our lives, invaded our hearts, and given us new life and freedom. And also talks about praising God for his holiness. Up next, former Rascal Flatts lead singer Jarry LeVox's sole debut EP. Former Rascal Flatts lead singer Jarry LeVox's sole debut EP, One on One. Let's dive into it. So, stylistically here, bass guitar, acoustic guitar, electric guitar, drum, and then there's piano on a couple tracks and gospel choir on a couple tracks. And as for the lyrics here, talked about how keeping our eyes fixed on God's love can help us live for Him even when the challenge comes. Up next, the Devil Wears Prada sequel to their 2010 EP Zombie, Z2. The Devil Wears Prada's new EP, Z2, the sequel to their 2010 EP Zombie. Let's dive into it. So stylistically here, definitely a metal EP, and all the tracks are really heavy. vocally, let's talk vocals first. Green's win today, but there are melodic sing vocals on every track at some point. Or as we call in the metal world, clean vocals. And there's a couple growls as well. And as for the lyrics here, talks about how we are hopelessly stuck inside this sin infection that has infected all of us, that is trying to kill us. But talks about, too, how we can outrun it if we can make it till dawn. Up next, our last release for today, Parris, Chariz, and Jarry Manna's new album, Super Splash Bros. 2. Parris, Chariz, and Jarry Manna's new album, Super Splash Bros. 2. Let's dive into it. So, stylistically, you're definitely a hip-hop release. Got some trap elements as well in a few of the tracks. Instrumentally here, we have bass, drum, bass guitar, synth, piano, and vocally here, we have a mix of rapping, rapping, and singing, all three on here. And as for the lyrics here, talks about riding the wave of God's freedom, even when the street's temptations try to pull them back. Well, that's it for this week. Come back next week for 5 more releases. If you like what you saw in this video, please subscribe. Also, if you have any thoughts on, I drop videos every Friday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, so be sure to set your notifications for that. Also, if you have any thoughts on today's releases or what I may have said about them, or anything that came out today that you want to see in next week's video, let me know down in the comments below. Also, you can check out my Music Month and Dreams playlist to see what I listen to every month. This month's playlist features Falling Up, Triply, Cutlass, and others. And I got a new edition of it dropping on Tuesday, so be looking for that if you're into my playlist. Well, I'll go now. See you next week. Happy Memorial Day weekend, by the way. Bye.